Well, I know Williams Memorial first started on Hicks Street. And Hicks Street was located in Harrisburg. And believe it or not, after all of the years that I grew up, I did not ever believe I would be a member because I grew up in Harrisburg in that community.
Right.
And then when I had an older brother who lived on Tutt Avenue, and I went to Collins in 1 year, 8th grade. And after I went to Collins, I started going to Williams, just visiting, because it was the closest to my church, the closest to my house. So that is my first memory of being at Williams.
There was outside bathroom toilets, outside, right by the gate there at the side of the church. There was a potbelly stove heater as you come in where the men stood sit over on the right hand side of the church when you're in the church. We call them potbellies back in the years, that they would just put wood and coal and stuff like that and would heat us up in the church. Outside, there was two things that you go and you notice today when they're doing work around in the street or whatnot on highways, they have these toilets. That was there, and that's what we had. There was no heat inside other than this big old heater that we had. And also no fellowship hall at all at the time. Later years, the fellowship hall came. And back in the day, they would ding the bell, and it's outside the church right now I guess remember that it would ring. Back then, we did baptize if you wanted to be out in the pool by the church, but it's not there because they closed it off. But it still kind of sink a little taste, like I don't know why that do that. But it has come a long ways. We didn't have all that, and the pews did not look like they look today. They were chairs, look alike, went across like the pews is going across, and on the floor, the legs of the chairs, they were screwed down in the floor of the church. And we had all of that. We went on, but the services. Then there were times we had big tent on the side of the church, and we had revival. This was, my grandmother had said to my grandfather to come by and join the church, because they were already there when I was born and all that stuff. So he finally came one night at the revival that was at the tent. After the service, he jumped up. He said, "Oh my God, I can't stand it! I can't stand it anymore!" He shut the tent that night. I will never forget. It was a beautiful night. At the time now, I cannot, of course, remember the pastor, but either one now, but it was very good. Everybody had a fit that night. And other things has happened.
The things that I remember most about Williams is the first Sunday I attended the church. Everybody was very friendly, and they invited me in. It seemed like a family of people. And then later on, I saw physical changes in the church under Pastor Reverend Gina Ardeen. We went through a major renovations of the church, built the educational building, and then under Reverend Gardner, we renovated the church again and installed stained glass windows. And really that made a big impact on the church. It really changed the entire interior of the church. Because some people wanted to build a new church, but we never had the funds to do that with. By renovating, we were able to update the church to where it is now. When we had the daycare center here, I was teaching at that time, and students at Laney High School built a lot of the furniture that we used in the daycare center. I would like to let those who don't know that the last renovation that was done in this church was done by my company, T.R. Clark and Associates. We installed the stained glass windows, all the sheetrock and molding in the church. We did all that. And that really, to me, made a big change physically changed the physical structure of the church as it looks today.
As a very young child, I did turn, because of my family, they were members of Williams Memorial back then. So I grew up, and that's when I joined. I was getting to be a young lady. There I was for a long time, and I started off singing with the children, with Clinton Brown and Miss Leola Key all back under. Then later years has passed, and I was a usher there for a long time. Then after that, I was in the Chancellor Choir. Few of them years of mine at Williams Memorial, I left Augusta, Georgia. I spent 20 plus years in Brooklyn, New York, and later I came back to Augusta. But I still at Williams Memorial, because I haven't joined any other church. That's where I always will be.
I joined Williams Memorial in 1953, and I didn't know about Williams Memorial, but my mother knew about it. And when we moved on Douglas Street, we were surrounded by neighbors that was a member of Williams Memorial, who encouraged us to join Williams. And I myself, about a week or so after I found out about Williams Memorial, Reverend Log had found out a new neighbor had moved on Douglas Street. And in a few weeks, he was knocking on the door to introduce himself as the pastor of Williams Memorial and to welcome us there. But we had neighbors, Maggie Smith, and Broners, and Leola Key and Willie Murray, all over from Williams Memorial, and they encouraged us to go to Williams Memorial. And the first visit I made at Williams Memorial, I said, "This is my church." And I knew what I wanted to work on at the church. First thing was the choir, but I didn't go right to the choir at the same time. I started working with the missionary. And during the time working with the missionary, at least I'm still working with the missionary, my mother was president of the Young Missionary Society. And I just enjoyed at Williams Memorial. And I'll be there.
I learned about Williams Memorial through a friend, and at the time I was looking for a church home, and I had been to several churches, and when I went to Williams, I felt that was not a need to look for another church, and that must have been around 1956. And I've been there ever since, and I'm happy to still be a member of Williams.
I joined Williams in 65, 64, 65, somewhere in that day. And I joined because my family member was already there. My grandmother moved to Augusta in 1952, and she and my uncles joined Williams at that time because Reverend Locke was the pastor, and he was a family friend. I joined under Reverend Dean. Throughout the years, I think there's been 5 generations of my family that's a member of Williams Memorial Church, starting back in 1952. My grandmother, my uncle, myself, my children and my grandchildren, we all are members of Williams Memorial Church.
My children were Lawrence Diggs III and Ronald Diggs. I've been a member of Williams since 1956, and I had 2 generations growing there, me and my children.
First of all, my Uncle Leon Horatio Jones, as we stayed on Hollis Street, And I never will forget the number of the house, 1262, which I used to say Hollis Creek. He was going to Payne College back then. He loved Payne College and golf. Later on, he joined the service before he really finished Payne College. He was a warrant officer in the service. So therefore, in being in the service, going from place to place, he met a lady named Lillian Fassett. That's who he married. And they had 7 of them. I'm the oldest of the crowd. 2 of them are already gone to glory. My mom, grandmama, and my aunt, they were was already a member of Williams Memorial CME Church. They were stewardesses. My mother was a choir member for a long time. And then I came along to learn how to sing, of course, with Senator Brown and Leola Key and all back yonder. Then I got to be a usher. So Belle Wilson and Eula Griffin was my grandmother's sisters. They were stewardesses for Williams Memorial for years until they went to glory. And my mother was in the choir. And I came along and I started tuning the bucket, started kind of myself there. So it was a wonderful thing. And then later on, like I said, I moved from there. But I never joined another church. Never. I don't think I ever will, because I've always been Williams Memorial. And it was wonderful. And it still is. And being there here the other week, first of this month, I had a good time there, sitting outside, looking at the people come and get their communion. I'm just waving and running my mouth. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. God bless.
They lived near the church, not immediately at the church. I'll say within a radius of 3 miles. My grandmother, my uncle, all those lived fairly close. But the neighborhood, as we know it back then, has changed significantly. You know, back then we had 2 public housing facilities thereabout. They are now gone. We've seen the community kind of transition itself from a working class family to more of a destination for most people because they live outside of the church closeness. We have seen a lot evolve out of that church. And of course, all of that also affects attendance. As people move out, the attendance do dwindle. And we have seen a significant amount of people leaving the church by virtue of moving. Williams Memorial has not reached its ultimate goal or potential. We do hope we will do better starting after post-pandemic.
I joined, like James, I joined under Reverend Dean. And I remember Reverend Dean, Reverend Cherry, Reverend Christopher Johnson, Reverend Thompson, Reverend King, Reverend Robertson, Reverend Gardner, Reverend Rogers, and now we have the illustrious Reverend Crew.
My name is Easter Archie. I'm a member of Williams Memorial CME Church. The following pastors have served Williams Memorial CME since I've been a member: Reverend Locke, Reverend Smith, Reverend Dean, Reverend Thompson, Reverend Cherry, Reverend Robertson, Reverend Johnson, Reverend King, Reverend Gardner, Reverend Roger, and my present pastor, Reverend Crew. Reverend Locke found I was new in town when I visited the church. He visited me several times and encouraged me to join, and I did. Reverend Dean was a pastor who knew if you were there or not. If you were not there more than one Sunday, he would call. If you or your family member was sick, he made a visit. If you had death in your family, he called or came to visit. For an example, he was getting ready to go out of town for a conference, and my class leader Mrs. Emma Allen called and told him I had lost my father. He called to see how I was doing. He was also there when my husband took ill and died. He came to visit the family. He dismissed the family from the house. He also assisted my nephew in dismissing the body at the cemetery. One of my daughters will always ask Reverend Tim if she can use him as references on her application. She also asked him to assist her and marrying her. We feel that Reverend Dean is a member of our family. Reverend King was not at Williams very long, but my family and I will always remember him. One of my daughters was very ill. He did not know because I did not tell him. A church member told him how ill she was. He came to the hospital and I told him I didn't call him because he was not a member. He said, "You are." He followed her wherever she went and prayed with her almost daily. And when she began to get better, the doctors told him, "God heard your prayers," because they didn't expect her to make it.
When me and my husband, John William Memorial, I had one son. He was 3 months old. And we joined on the leadership of Reverend Robert A. Law. And then, later on, I had 2 more children born. A son, John Wesley, who passed away in 2019. And then John Wesley and my daughter Deborah, John William Memorial, on the leadership of Reverend Gene Ordain, and was baptized. And all my children raised up at William Memorial. And my daughter got married at William Memorial, Reverend Dean. And my oldest son, when he got married, he didn't get married at William Memorial, but Reverend Dean was a part of his wedding. And so my whole family was William Memorial. And my mother, I always wanted to be like my mother. She was a spiritual journey for me. And she told me things that was going to happen. And she also told me it's not easy to be a Christian, but you have to pray and have patience with the Lord.
My youngest son, Ronnie, had always said he wanted to be married at Williams. He still considered Williams his church also. So it worked out well, and Reverend King was the pastor when he was married there.
Some of the activities include missionary. We visit the sick and shut in, the Meals on Wheels. We started that when Mrs. Mance was our president, and we continued until last year. We had to stop because of the virus. I worked with the Maddie Coleman Circle for years, taught and attended Vacation Bible School, helped with repasses at the church, participated in community activities. The next activity that I participate in that I would like to talk about is student series. And the job of students is to assist the pastor to serve the table of the Lord. And that means making sure the elements are on the altar and the linens are in place. To assist the minister in receiving new members into the church, to assist with delivering communion to the sick and shut in, to assist the board of students with his pastor's salary, and to assist the pastor with baptism. And when I first joined the students board, we was making our own bread at that time. And I was working with some of the students, like Mrs. Wilson, Mrs. Griffin, Miss Maud Williams, Miss Franklin, Miss Hattie Lowry, and many others. And we had times making the bread. And we use a batter just like you doing pancakes or something that you have. And we use cold irons, and we would put them on the stove and let them get hot. You turn one upside down, and you put your batter on it, and you put the other one on top. And if it turned out okay, you continue. But if it did not, you had to start all over to make sure you had it right.
When our children were small, as a matter of fact, both our children were born after I joined Williams Memorial. So when they were small, I'd make sure they went to Vacation Bible School, Sunday school, and now they remind me of CYL, and then I think I insisted that they be an usher, so I had to attend that to take them back and forth. But now, in 1970, we had a club called the Young Adults Circle, and we started a daycare center. And I was the first chairman of the board. As a matter of fact, I signed the contract. And my son Stephen, who is now 53, was one of the first students enrolled at Williams Memorial Daycare Center. And then I'm the secretary of the Usher Board now, and I'm vice president of the Missionary Society. And I always loved Bible study. Now, we do Bible study on Wednesday night and a Thursday morning. And that is one of my great things that I like to do. And I'm a member of the Mac White Missionary Circle. And we have great things that we like to do. We encourage all the young people and people outside even to do good things and be a member of the missionary circle, because as we say, all laymen are missionaries. We all are supposed to be people who seek to bring people to Christ and bring them into our church. So one of our goals is to grow our church, to make it stronger and better, and keep growing it in a spiritual way.
Learned to sing in the choir as a very young child, being an usher.
I remember going to Bible school. The church was not air conditioned at the time, and we would be outside under the trees. I remember Miss Leola Key, she was the pianist at the time, and Clint Brown taught us a little song. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He went up into the sycamore tree for the Savior he wanted to see. And as the Savior passed, he looked up in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus, come down, for I'm coming to your house today. And at the end of Bible school, we would charter a bus and we would go and have a picnic. That was our culminating activity. Graduated from Holster Institute in Cordele, Georgia. and it was a Methodist-supported school. The academics were on the ground floor. The upper floor was the girls' dormitory, and the basement was the dining room. And I remember, my mother would give me a nickel and we'd buy an apple to have for our lunch. But whenever they had Spanish rice, we would always eat in the dining room. And that was quite an experience. And at Holesley, whoever was the principal of the school was also the pastor of my church, Bethel CME Church. And that's where I came in contact with Dr. Pitts. He was Reverend Pitts then, Dr. Pitts, and Lorena Gandy and her husband. As a matter of fact, most of the faculty members were graduates of Payne, and I guess that's how they got there for their first teaching position. Reverend Dean also graduated from Holesley, and Maurice Cherry, who was our pastor at one time, he graduated from Holesley. We grew up together. He was a cousin of mine, and as children, we grew up, and when they decided to move our church, we met in the auditorium at the school until the church was completed. And Reverend Locke was also a teacher at Holesley at one time.
Nadine Wilson was a great influence on my spiritual growth at Williams. I grew up as a Baptist, and reading was a new way of serving God. She saw my need and came to assist me. She asked me to work with her and the young children in the church. I found her great joy was working with children. I watched her give much, love much, and serve much. For an example, if she knew a child was hungry, she fed it. If a child needed clothing, she supplied them. If a child had skill, for an example, music, she made training available. Working with Mrs. Wilson caused me to start working with the Maddie Coleman Circle. We participated in many activities.
When I joined the church, of course, that was a whole different set of leaders. And I remember Reverend L.D. Mance came to me one day, and I was probably been there a year and a half. And he said, "Young man, you need to be on the steward board or the trustee board." I said, "Okay." He said, "So I'm gonna talk to the pastor and see if he want to function." And he did, and they did. They appointed me to the trustee board, and then Tappan, Aaron Tappan, was a faithful member back then. He was one of those kinds that embraced myself and Curtis Cicero. Curtis Cicero and I joined at the same time, and Jenna Walker. We all joined about the same time.
Okay.
And out of that came a lifelong friendship with all of them. Okay. How did they influence my life? Because I saw leaders then who had the courage to lead the church. They were strong men, and they really took care of that church. If they couldn't pay for it, getting it down, they did it themselves. And I saw something in them that it's kind of hard to find now. So, but that has been probably the greatest influence, and of course the pastors themselves have always had influence.
My mother raised me up in the church, and she always saw taught us how to be a Christian. And she was a person, she was quiet, but she seemed to love everybody. And I can't remember ever seeing her angry, but I'm sure she got angry sometimes. But she had always been a spiritual journey for me and my family. And I love William Memorial. And the thing that she did at William Memorial was a Christian journey for me. She taught me things. She taught me about working in the church. And I worked in the choir, council choir, gospel choir, missionary, and the Board of Education, layman council, and was a class leader of number 7. I worked in all of those by my mother doing my spiritual training. My mother taught me that whatever you do, always put God first. And don't give up. Have faith. Pray. And all those things I remember my mother saying that she taught me in the church about working in the church. And so I've been there for 6 to 8 years. And out of those 6 to 8 years, there's been a lot of changes. But I know this is 21st century and things are going to change. But one thing about it, God hasn't changed. That's a blessing.
What I would try to encourage young people is to attend church, study the Bible, and find a senior member of the church that that person can be a mentor for them. Because when I joined, there were several members that I looked up to. On the steward board, P.A. Mapps, Adolph Dixon, Oral Bronner, Clinton Lovett, John Franklin. All those men were here when I joined the church. And on the missionary and stewardship board, we talked about Sister Curtis Roberts, Sister Willie Mae Murray, Mabel Smallwood, and those ladies, and the Bell and Eula Wilson. Those ladies really inspired me and encouraged me to do the things I need to do in the church, to stay in the church. Then you had Kingsley Violet, who was over the Board of Christian Aid. She was very inspirational into my life. And I'll tell young people to just really study your seniors and look to them. Sometimes we call them old fogey, but if you study these seniors, there's a wealth of knowledge that they can give you to help you in your life's journey. And that's one thing that's helped me in my life. Looking at those, and along with our Pastor Loving Dean at that particular time, he really, really inspired me to go on to higher heights and to be a better Christian each day I live.
It's service time. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. Trust in him, and he will guide you.
It is well with my soul. That was my mother's favorite song. And as a matter of fact, now I have it recorded. And I play it at least once or twice a week at home because it's recorded.
And what about you?
Our great God.
My favorite hymn is Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine. And the scripture that really daily spiritual journey is Psalms 27, 14th verse. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord.
There are several hymns that come to mind. One is Blessed Assurance, Jesus is mine. Amazing Grace. And there's another one I like. I call it Hold On to God's Unchanging Hands. Scripture, 100 Psalms. 23rd Psalms. I like the Psalms. Those are the scriptures I try to live by each day. And do unto others as you have them to do unto you.
My hymn is May the Work I've Done Speak for Me.
One of my favorite hymns is Sweet Hour of Prayer. One of my favorite scriptures is be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And if we practice this, the world will be a better place.
Congratulations to William Memorial on this 148th anniversary. Share a special bond of faith. Help make each day a new blessing. Share the power and joy of walking in grace.